Greetings and salutations, I'm Terran Reviews. Today's video is going to be an unapologetic, nostalgia-packed trip down memory lane. We're going to be taking a look at a game I haven't played in over 15 years. I now return to it at a point in time where life is nothing but complications and the only guarantees are death, taxes, back pain, and lack of home ownership. But hey, at least we've got great gameplay, great level variety, and incredible beats to serve as a distraction. This is Ratchet & Clank, released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2. And is not to be confused with that soulless remake, reimagining, or whatever you want to call it from 2016. It was made by Insomniac Games, who were the same people that made the Spyro games for the original PlayStation. Reception from the Ratchet & Clank playtesters was so positive that development for the sequel, Going Commando, was approved 5 months before the first game shipped.
When you fire this game up, your little fucking nuts are gonna start quaking, buddy. You're gonna shoot. That's my money back guarantee. If you don't bust a nut the first time you play, message me.
We essentially play as an orange cat, who is the embodiment of chaotic and destructive cat energy. Ratchet is a mechanic who spends more time destroying things than he does repairing them. This series is basically an ANCAP's wet dream because, unlike our reality, this universe uses commodity money, which comes in the form of nuts and bolts. These bolts can be exchanged to buy all kinds of recreational weapons that are available from your nearest galactic spanning corporation. Oh, and our companion is a talking toaster that can transform into a death robot and level everything in its way with a giant energy ball of death. This may seem like a game for children at first, but what awaits you is a fun experience that is suitable for pretty much anyone. I say this because the PS2 quadrilogy had a running theme of being a parody of rabid consumerism. Practically every single character you meet wants a favor or a cut of your savings account before they allow you to progress the plot.
Oh my god.
What's that? There's a planetary invasion going on right now? Hey man, can I get some spare change for some Popeyes? Thankfully, these games are almost devoid of hand-holding, and there are no annoying characters with verbal diarrhea. This is an incredible breath of fresh air since this is a common occurrence in modern games. I'd also like to point out that many of the game's names are innuendos. Plus, the two main characters are actual three-dimensional characters with flaws and traits. And thankfully, not a single character is insufferable. Upon first inspection, Ratchet & Clank may appear to be a third-person shooter with janky shooter elements. While the shooting is a little janky, this game is a platformer first and a shooter second. You have to think ahead before you decide to shoot at enemies with non-AoE based weapons while in the middle of combat. The movement in this game still holds up. Just make sure you adjust the inverted camera controls and sensitivity. Ratchet has a decent moveset at the start of the game. He's able to jump from wall to wall, double jump, use ledges and swim. His moveset is further augmented with Clank's upgrades. The helipack will allow Ratchet to do a high jump and long jump. On the other hand, the thruster pack still gives him a high jump, but it also allows him to zoom across the battlefield and strafe while using weapons. The Hydra pack gives you a speed boost and counteracts strong currents. We're also able to swing, throw, and do slam attacks with Ratchet's wrench. Speaking of hardware, this series is known for its wide range of weapons and gadgets. We've got a flamethrower, a portable Tesla coil, a rocket launcher, a gun that turns enemies into chicken, and a pneumatic boxing glove. And that is only a few of the weapons this game has to offer. My personal favourite is the Visibomb gun, which is basically a TV-guided missile launcher. Before I forget, we even have a suck cannon that will suck up short kings, which will then serve as ammunition and can be launched back out at enemies. Since this is an action-adventure game, the player will end up travelling to a wide variety of locations across the Solana galaxy. Here is a small selection of locations you will see: planet-wide metropolis, a tropical resort, a volcanic depot, a space station, and a massive logging operation. One of my personal favourites is the toxic planet of Auxon, where I get to shoot rockets at space seagulls. They shouldn't have pinched me, nanotech. This game does a wonderful job of providing great level variety. Each level is linear, but will usually have multiple paths that you can explore. You can travel between all of the planets whenever you want. This game has a surprising level of depth when it comes to the game's progression due to how certain planets are connected to each other. That's because there are times where you won't be able to progress down a certain path until you've obtained a gadget or coordinates from another planet later on in the story. One example of this is when you need to retrieve a holo disguiser so you can trick robots into deactivating these force fields for you. As a result, the locations never become stale because you're never really in one place for too long. Some gadgets are completely optional. For instance, the metal detector is more about helping you to inflate your bank balance, finding murder weapons, unexploded ordnance, and pissing off the local authorities. Whereas the magnetic boots, swing shot, and hacking device are needed to progress and give you access to optional areas. Speaking of variety, the game will spice up the gameplay with various segments. Sometimes you'll be grinding it up on railings, or shredding it down with the exaggerated swagger of a yellow Lombax in hoverboard races. If that wasn't already enough, there are a few times when you'll be dogfighting like it's Ace Combat. The game will place you in Clank's shoes, where he has to utilize and control minions to deal with his foes that are too dangerous for him to handle alone. I am fully aware that not everyone likes these sections, but honestly, I don't mind them. Conversely, with a simple button press, Clank is able to super bulk his way out of small king status and become Giant Clank. This allows him to let out all of the pent-up anger he's gained from every small stature joke he's received over the years. Unlike platformers prior to Ratchet & Clank, this game is not a collectathon. This means that you don't have to go around like a kleptomaniac, stealing anything that isn't bolted down. In spite of that fact, you could choose to collect gold bolts, which are scattered throughout the game. Sometimes these bolts are in plain sight but out of reach, and other times they are tucked away. Usually, you'll end up coming back to get some of them when you've acquired a new gadget. Once you've completed the game, you can choose to do New Game Plus. You keep your upgraded health, your weapons, your bolts, and some of your gadgets. It's incredibly fun, and you don't have to worry about paying for everything to progress the plot. This time around, you can focus on saving up bolts for the Rhino.
What's a rhino anyway?
Rip ya a new one.
What did you just say to me?
R-Y-N-O. Rip ya a new one.
Why, that's the most powerful missile launcher in the galaxy. I know it's worth a lot of bolts. He must have stolen it from the Blarg.
New Game Plus also lets you use those gold bolts you collected earlier to upgrade weapons into golden weapons, which increases their damage. My go-to choice is to upgrade the Flamethrower into the Brat Thrower. I wish more games had New Game Plus. There are many words I could use to describe the soundtrack of this game. If I could use one of those words, it would be excellent. The music does an incredible job of meshing together with the action-packed gameplay. The vast majority of tracks are catchy and extremely memorable. Once you hear one of the tunes, you'll never forget it. The blending of genres became such an integral part of the series, so much so that the series was never the same when it lost the composer, David Bergeau, one absolute GOAT.
The GOAT! The GOAT!
Tragically, the game's soundtrack was exported into a mono format, and there has yet to be an official stereo release of the music. In a beautiful turn of events, some absolute mad lad managed to remaster the soundtrack into stereo, and it sounds even better than before. The link will be in the description. Now it's time to talk about the story. The story starts with Ratchet trying to get off his home planet, but he can't leave because he's missing a key component. Meanwhile, a defective toaster learns too much about Chairman Bezos' money-making scheme, which involves cobbling chunks of other planets together to form new planets. The robot's escape attempt causes him to end up meeting Ratchet. Clank wants to find Captain Quark, who is basically a galactic hero and reminds me of someone. Clank wants to warn him about this galactic threat, and Ratchet needs Clank to activate his ship so he can leave the planet. The two agree to help each other out. During their adventures, they meet and help various side characters and disrupt Chairman Bezos' operations. They eventually find Captain Quark, but Clank leads the duo into an obvious trap. It just so happens that Quark is a literal shill for the Chairman's new planet. Quark is a washed-up hero who needs the money from the corporate position that Drek promised him. Ratchet wasn't fully invested in Clank's desire to play hero, but now he's mad at Clank and wants to go after Quark. Clank tries to reason with a hot-headed and abrasive Ratchet. Clank doesn't get through to him until he defeats Quark. and learns more about Drek's plan, which involves destroying multiple planets. Drek needs an ideal location to place his first new planet. Coincidentally, Ratchet's homeworld is in the way, and Drek wants to destroy it so he can place his new planet in Velden's optimal orbit. Ratchet comes to his senses, puts his grievances aside, and with Clank's help, he foils Drek's plan. One of the game's main criticisms is that Ratchet's personality comes off as a bit too selfish and dismissive towards Clank. While I do agree that Ratchet can be abrasive at times, I don't see this as a bad thing for the story or characters. They're character flaws that help to create a three-dimensional character and set the stage for future character growth. Initially, Ratchet's just a mechanic who wants to see what's beyond his backwater homeworld. He only agrees to help Clank find Quark because he needs Clank to start up his ship, so the two are stuck together. Ratchet has no personal stakes or interest in stopping Drek until he learns more about Drek's plan. By the end of the game, Ratchet does undergo some growth and becomes more sympathetic towards Clank. These days, Ratchet doesn't really have much character depth, and is written to be very friendly and likable. I miss when he had a bit of edge to him. I've only been able to recently replay this gem thanks to the power of emulation, which was my only option since my PlayStation 3 is located over 5,000 miles away, and I don't remember where I put my PlayStation 2. It's probably hiding out somewhere in the Bass Pro Shop pyramid. Anyway, I'm playing the PS2 version of this game at 60 FPS with a texture replacement pack. Aside from a couple of minor issues, it runs great because I finally have a system that is powerful enough to emulate ancient technology from the year 2000 AD. Try not to pay too much attention to the noise. It's just that my laptop identifies as a Lockheed Martin F-35. If you want to play these games, you have three options. You can try finding a PS2 and said games. You can also try getting the Ratchet collection, which as far as I know is currently stuck on the Vita and PS3. It's not something I'd recommend since the collection has a bunch of minor graphical issues with character models and so on. For me, the most realistic option was emulation. It requires a little bit of work to get working, but it isn't too hard. Coincidentally, the most recent Ratchet game is coming to Steam, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sony eventually bites the bullet and starts getting Insomniac or some other studio to port the rest of the series over to the PC. You just have to be patient. Hey, I'm still waiting for Ghost of Tsushima to come over to the PC because I don't want to buy a $500 paperweight. Ratchet & Clank is an excellent game with an equally excellent soundtrack to boot. It was a much needed breath of fresh air for me. The only thing that hasn't aged so well is the weapon lock-on system, but that issue was addressed in the sequels. As it stands, it isn't that much of a big deal if you take your time and think. It's not something that bothers me. I give this game a US National Debt out of 10. Thank you for watching, and I will probably see you
within 6 months.
I make no promises.